NEXT100 2013 award winner. He's Pradeep Chankarachan. He's Director IT Projects and Head of Digital India for Harman International. And Pradeep has over 18 years of experience in the industry. He's held leadership roles in corporate IT portfolio management, business unit alignment, IT strategy development, and program execution and governance. He's done a number of corporate-wide, large-scale ERP and digital transformation initiatives in the high-tech and discrete manufacturing industries. And currently, he's head of IT at Harman and leads the Asia and Far East IT and is driving global projects for Harman across divisions. And today, he will be speaking on repositioning IT in the digital era. So please put your hands together to welcome on stage Mr. Pradeep Chankarachan.
Hey, very good morning. Hope you can hear me well. And thanks, Giri, for the introduction. I'm happy to be here because I'm proud to be a product of, I was here many years back, and I was just running through this question to revalidate that I'm still there or not. I think we all should take every year because the change is so fast, right? Before I start, maybe a quick intro is like how many of you are belonging to core infrastructure area in your organization which you're responsible? Core infrastructure, great. And how many of you are on the application side? Great. And how many of you have any digital or business analysis or any that kind of title? Great. I think it's a perfect mix. You would have very heavy sessions that I see in cloud and big data, and I'm not covering any of those. I think you all experts in some of those areas yourself. What I would try to cover is that how my journey has been in last 4-5 years, and how IT also has changed in many ways. And luckily, I was in an organization in Harman. If you don't know, it's the makers of JBL. We are a Samsung company now, and Harman itself has gone through this transformation. So we have been known as the audiophiles, the products like the JBLs and the Harman Kardon and all. The organization has changed into a connected technology company now. So that itself put me in a place that I don't need to move myself. The organization has moved me into a place where I don't have any other choice than embrace digital there. That's one. So that gives me a little more confidence that what I've experienced in my organization, and I keep attending many conferences to see that that's getting validated. So I think that's one of the learnings you can take, that it's a real experience. I don't need to sell anything, but I will tell what worked for me. That's one aspect. Second is that as individuals, as you move from this role to be an aspirant CIO or a chief digital officer, what it takes as individuals that you need to be aware, right? I think you're in the right place today, so I would utilize the maximum time to benefit. Okay, so just a starter. Nothing political about it. This is somewhat probably you can relate yourself. In an organization, what a CEO is expected and what a CDO is expected. I'm not sure how many are able to make both happen, and that's what our Prime Minister and our government is also trying to solve the problem, right? So this is just, so if you look at, I've gone through this, right? So I couldn't talk about a bullet train unless I solve a day-to-day issues, right? Unless in my organization, the hygiene aspects of running the emails all the time, running the conference things all the time, running the video conferencing and audio conferencing at the optimal levels, I can't talk about bullet trains in the organization, right? But having said that, the organization itself is expecting that both issues might be there, right? And they're expecting leaders. That's one of the expectation from CXOs, from my country manager or from my global organization, is that you try to balance these, right? And many times we keep it as two separate areas. That's what I ask, who's primarily responsible for this or not. But in today's world, we can't keep this separate, right? And these are reality, and we need to understand first that there is such thing, right, in the organization. And many times I compare that the kind of technologies you have in place is like ingredients, right? It's like what do you use in your kitchen, right? Everybody cooks, everybody's happy with what they cook at their home, but there is no single recipe, right? The sambar made at my home or the dal made at other house may not may not taste the same, but people are happy with that. Some people are, if not happy, they will buy from outside, right? So you have to have an analogy of that whatever you hear and learn and think that doesn't fit exactly the way in your organization. That's one of the biggest learning, right? So the ingredients might be the same, but how do you stack it out? What's the kind of digital diet or even a normal diet you have in your organization? That's one of the expectation to do that. So that's some of the aspects which as individual leaders you have to sense it as you go through this journey. So many times it is the data center was the core of the IT place, right? So recently I was visiting along with my global CIO and CDO. Our CIO also takes the role of Chief Digital Officer, which is good for me, so that there is no other head banging with other organizations. That really helps. So we were visiting one of the service providers, and the most interesting aspect was that the center of excellence of that service provider, which I knew from many years, has been moved into their data center. So in last decade or so, when I visited that place, that was their core data center building, and that's been now showcased as a center of excellence, and some people call it as anything as service, right? So the service providers have moved on, and one of the most interesting conversation we had with the service provider was not with the BUs which they sell, but actually with the CIO of that organization, right? So our leaders always try to connect even with the CIOs of those service providers, because it is no more that service provider organizations are different than many of our organizations, right? So if an organization can handle like 2 lakh odd employees, we definitely want to know how do they handle it, right? And that's really an open and a casual discussion, which really got us a lot of insight that they don't have MPLS, right? And we still struggle at that point to get MPLS links from our global partners, like the big guys, and the changing those days have gone, and they're on the internet, right? And that's really an insight for all of us to see that it's not just what the service providers sell, but also how it's been consumed. So as you grow, as you become leaders, this is one other aspect which you need to really understand, that not just stick with one solution which works, but also understand how it's been used. So, and being an IT leader in your organization, you are the epicenter of a lot of things, and this has been there all the time. But it took a lot of time for us to really convert those intelligent data to go back and say that, hey, this is how your supply chain is working, right? And this is how I see that your elapsed times are here, right? And then we jointly partner with them and say that why these projects are done, or why these are done, or why these products are to be used. So there's a lot of insight while we work on solving our in-house problems. This really helps you an insight to see that follow the data, right? So one other thing which I always tell the team is that really for you to really connect with what's happening in an organization is one to three things, right? One, you follow where the cash is spent, where the money is flowing, right, in your organization, right? Second thing is that follow where your material, if you're manufacturing or something, follow how the material flows. So if you understand how the raw materials are procured, how it reaches the end customer, and how it's been consumed and how it's served, that's another way. And third one, of course, is that follow your IT processes, follow your technology tools. So any one of these, based on your digest of technology or finance or a supply chain mindset, would really help you to really crack the problem of how the organization works. So just imagine understanding that DNA and then applying your all specialized skills in whichever area you are. You can really be the person whom people want to talk to you, right? So people will come to you not with problems, but with rather there will be still problems. That's the whole thing, right? People will come to you and share their problems, right? And people will come to you and then have a joint conversation to see how the organization can move. So the data center is no more a closed wall. It is like the air is coming from outside, whatever chillers you put in, or the data center would be somewhere out, right? So one is that's one change as individuals you need to move out. And I think what I sensed is that when do I realize that this is shifting in the organization? So I'm not saying that this is 2017 and all organizations would have gone and embraced digital in one way or the other, because we are seeing very, very different paced organizations. There are organizations which thrive only on digital technologies. There is organization which is only looking at the digital economy outside. There are organizations which is struggling to embrace, the change in the technology, the change in not only in the technology, I would rather say change in the economy, right? How consumers are viewed at and stuff like that. So I had the privilege that our major customers were on the auto side. So if you look at the auto industry, before I joined Harman, we were only looking at auto as, yeah, it's nice to drive cars, an infotainment system or something like that. But if you look at it, each and everybody wants to get into the car, right? And that's a big change. And the industry is not yet there to really, understand and change the way they work. There are multiple reasons, because it's about life and death. Autonomous car is everybody want to be in the autonomous car. But the reason is that the auto industry typically takes a model around 5 to 6 years, right? So they run that, and we are part of the software part of it. And we ourselves take a couple of years to get those systems up. And that's only about infotainment and entertainment part of it earlier. But now we are in the center of the car, and that means it's not just the playing music or the maps, but that's the same system which actually takes care of your braking, takes care of your airbags, takes care of your life-saving things. So it's very difficult that you change that. But the good thing is that if that changes, right, the autonomous car gets in the real road, then a lot of other issues gets resolved automatically, right? A lot of feedback I get from the industry is that IoT is there, but I do not know whether it's ready to be deployed in a production grade. I don't know what's the regulatory things for sensors. I don't know what can be put in the plant, which can go out, and then in between you get a lot of ransomware, right? So it doesn't come easy, right? So that's one. So first thing is how do you sense that there is a falling IT, right? How do you sense in your organization around that when do you see things are falling or things are at least lagging, if I don't call falling. So a few things which I observed is primarily, if the organization is having a lot of appetite for products, right? So buy it, use it, and hopefully sometime they'll even throw it, right? So that's one when there are a lot of throughput coming from product side, where people have seen something somewhere and they want to use it right away, right? That's one, and you don't see many of project planning on those. The other interesting thing is that a lot of times this IT security, the CS office get caught off guard if their engineering teams or if the team is doing a lot of maverick things, right? So it was a time where you had to control everything, right? The CSOs were always looked at as you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, right? From that, we have to really move on to say that why do they want to do that, right? That's a huge gap if the CSOs and CIOs doesn't understand that why people are not following this, right? So that was the case when you had BYODs and stuff like that, and that's been sorted out. People have understood it's not about the device, it's about what's in the device, or how do you really utilize the device, right? Now you can't say that, right? So even in conferences, right, you can't ask people to switch off your mobile because they may be taking notes in mobile, right? They may be recording this, they may be doing this. So you are no more on and off. So you're always connected. So the understanding that why they are doing it and understanding and aligning that where this organization is heading to, right? Because no more things can be resolved by projects and policies. So I think ad hoc cloud adoption, we have seen it. A lot of customers of your organization maybe already wanted to get in cloud, right? And they already might be there. So it's not really ad hoc. It's primarily driven by the market and understand in which part of it your organization can be. When I'm talking about this, it's about two aspects. One is your enterprise part of it, which you have more control, like whether if you want to go to an Office 365, it doesn't need much of a discussion with your end users or your BUs, but they just look at your return of investment or cost. But this is about serving the engineering community or serving a community which is closer to your technology. And nowadays, I see that a lot of times the non-high-tech industry goes faster and adopts these things than the high-tech because we are a little scared of ransomwares, right? So we say, yeah, you can do this, but, So, but rather that they'll say, okay, let's go and figure it out because we have nothing else to lose. It's like you skip the mainframe era and then you embrace into a cloud. So if you have never done an SAP or a ERP, it's the right time to go into a cloud-based thing, and then you may not even need an ERP, and then your blockchains and stuff like that. It's more easy for them to understand and appreciate. Yeah, I've never done it. I would like to do it. That's one. Yeah, of course, you will not see a real alignment and strategy of these because these are really evolving. So you will not see this is the next 3 years project, this is the next 5 years project. You are not going to see any of those. So because the organization itself doesn't know where they'll end up in 3 years, right? So they really wanted to see on a shorter cycle. The last point is on the broken glass part. So one is that having said all these, from an IT operation point, that is still important to keep it tight, right? When you see certain things are broken, right, and it keeps breaking that. That's if you understand the broken glass syndrome. So a building which has a broken glass, there is more tendency that the other glasses will be broken soon because then people will feel that okay, nobody is taking care of it, right? And that's when things can really rip apart. Because then okay, you can do this way, right? You can do this way, or they don't take care. But having said all these, one of the core skill is that keep those tight. Operations still needs to be tight. The things which the external world, the non-IT world doesn't understand still needs to be tight. And that's also links with one of your skills is if you look at mostly the skill sets required is on networking and on security. Now these are the two things which many of the non-IT or a digital world doesn't understand. They appreciate what's coming out of it, but these are the two areas which you need to have even if you don't understand or even if you don't really manage that, but you need to really appreciate and understand which are the options we have and what to be done, because I don't think there is anybody else really interested. This is the non-glamorous part of it, but which is the very underlying 7 layers have not changed. A lot of the underlying things have not changed, but this is what you need to keep your eyes always on. So the other aspect is that even the execution models for the projects or implementation needs to change, right? You can't have the same old waterfall or even the agile build for the earlier era will no more work because that will be disaster when you don't know what's the backlog, when you do not know where you're heading. So you might still be doing agile, you might be failing fast, but if you're handling project executions or a PMO or an enterprise PMO, you need to really relook at, question the foundation, like why, at what stage these were built. So I start with primarily, even from portfolio management or when you build, why these projects are being built into getting into how you release it, how you build it. So these all gets converted into your DevOps model or converts into how kind of skill set you need for your team. All this happens. For example, as we understood this in our organization, we stopped asking estimates in the beginning. We just asked, give us 100K, give us 3 months, this is you may get, or this at least I can tell that this is what you don't get, right? So there are scenarios where we don't really go back to them and ask, okay, I'll come back in 2 weeks with all the estimates, or I don't go back to the suppliers and say that, give me all the estimates and come back. So we understand why we are doing it and how it's aligned. And if that's agreed upon, then what we just ask is time and money, right? And then we don't really, and just burn, and that converts into your execution cycle. So the most resistance which we found is not on these, but most resistance would be maybe from your team. Much easy to say that be flexible, be agile, be higher productivity, but as leaders, you need to be really role models to say that if you follow this is the productivity you get, or this is how you motivate your team members to say that the whole organization is changing. Your earlier skill set may no longer be valid. So how do you get them together? So if they get an understanding that this is where they're going, and then encourage them to understand how the organizations are changing. So we all take examples of Kodak, Nokia, and others, but you don't know. We might be a Kodak, we might be a Nokia, right? So, but they are coming back and doing it. So that sense is really important for you to motivate your team members. I grabbed this from Gartner because finally Gartner has brought all these together, right? I think many of you might be attending sessions on design thinking or on lean startup or agile. So what I mentioned was primarily, this is applicable for startups, as well as if you look at your own organization as a startup, right? So, or even your own initiatives as startups. So look at from this angle, right? So one of the things which we did in our organization is that starting from naming the projects which we do, we don't no more call an SAP implementation for this or that. We call them what's the business outcome of that, right? For example, if I am going to do lifestyle for India, I would say, getting 25 million from India, through enabling the lifestyle India, whatever, right? So that puts you in think that is not yet done unless we meet that particular target of 25 million, right? The same project can be done by creating a company code for India, right? So the moment you say creating a company code for India, it's fine, right? The people working on it doesn't understand why India is important or what's so different in India than others, right? So this includes your GST, this includes your the warehouse situations in India and all those stuff. So you need to really put in those aspects. And also, most important thing, if you're going through, I'm not going through in detail in design thinking, but there are many videos available. But one of the key skills is empathizing with your users. That's most important aspect. And it's not so difficult skill set per se, right? It works at your home as well, right? Many times with your spouse, what is required is just empathy, right? It's not about why you were late, right? It's not about trying to answer why you were late, right? Nobody's interested to know why you were late by 10 minutes or 15 minutes, but empathizing that, these are the situations, which you need to avoid. So that's more important as IT leaders to understand your internal users. What do they feel about it, right? What do they feel about IT? So I think the first thing is that once you break this, you will break the barrier about we versus they, right? So typically in the earlier stage, it was always looked at IT does this, it's their job. That's the first barrier, you need to break it. And for each of your internal projects or implementation, you can always use this. It may not be so easy to do it right away. It is when we tried it, it was not happening that I put this slide or something and it doesn't work like that. But I know I am in this path, right? And sometimes the beneficiaries may not really know that I did all this, right? But they will be only looking at, okay, this was delivered or not. But once you make few success stories, it becomes much easier that, no, I want the same output like you did the last one, right? So then you say, yeah, this is what we followed, right? So in your own organization, preaching doesn't work, right? It's the actions that really work. So I don't really say that take exactly like this and do, but customize or behaviorally change so that it works in your organization. And definitely you will have a lot of ambassadors for you. Nowadays that gap is really getting lean and lean. A lot of people even want to join IT and digital organization. So if you have gone through Agile Manifesto, a lot of things are related to this, and all of these are valid in digital scenarios, right? They're interested in outcome rather than output, right? It's more incremental than iteration. So if you have seen how to build a car, a lot of analogy that it's not that you start with building part of the car, but you build a building with a moving object like a cycle and then add more wheels to it. That's like people feel that, what are you trying to achieve, right? Moving from A to B. And the last thing is that it's always value over predictability. So earlier time is that it was always under budget, on time, within the scope kind of KPIs. That has changed. It's more about what was the real outcome, what is the real value of the change, right? So that's one thing you need to rework on your business cases, rework on your convince. And the moment you do it as individuals, there will be a lot more trust that you are closer than anybody else. I'll touch upon the digital part of it. So we have seen the digital from the external world, but when you look at from your internal organization, so some of the myths are this, like digital is IT or IT is digital, right? Some of the organizations are even changing their department to digital, right? So that's one myth. It is not a department or function. It's about how the organization works, how it was working earlier to now, what's the impact for their top line or bottom line. And digital transformation also, if you look at, has three various aspects. One definitely is technology. Without technology, digital is impossible. But more than that, the second and third is about the context on which these transformations are done, right? What is being done. And the third one is that what is the impact on their revenue or on their external facing part? What is the impact on the digital economy? For example, e-commerce for an organization which is doing like an Amazon or Flipkart it's the core thing, right? It's their whole DNA, the whole thing works over it. But for us, building a digital commerce site was a backup for us when the real world really falls. So we convert that. So it's not just the revenue target. It is, we have built a digital commerce site which can really grow if tomorrow I don't have my distributors and all in the US, say Best Buy bankruptcy happens, so I am prepared to take over that. But the strategy is that I'm there. I'm not really missing out that. But compared to a different organization, for them, they may not need to be in even e-commerce site. So that's one. And it's not about pilots. Pilots is like, we have done this all the time. We have always done this pilot. So we always been casually talked pilot. Yeah, it's a pilot, right? It's always done it at a very, very, no expectation kind of thing. But these are not pilots. These are like really, transforming the organization works. So next few slides I'll take as individual, what it takes to get this river crossed. Of course, as this is not only from organization, but even as individuals, you should have a vision of where your role will look like, right? So we always looked up to the earlier CIOs, earlier IT leaders, right? And that's may not really work because those leaders are also, transforming themselves. It's no more a CIO role that's really attracting a lot of people. It's about a lot of CIOs want to move into business part because the technology has embraced in the organization, right? So next CEO could be from the CEO as long if the company is getting in a disruptive mode, getting into a digital world. So you should have your own vision. Where do you want to end up? So I'm not saying that this is good or bad, but really understand which side you want to fall, because both are equally important. But understand that having an appreciation for both sides really helps you to move. The few other aspects is customer-centric. That's something which we really can leverage because we understand every day, a pulse of the organization, right? So I tell the biggest pulse you get is from your IT service desk, right? And many service providers doesn't understand, right? Even if you give the entire data to them and say, tell me what are my problems, right? I know my problems, but I want to really validate whether those are the real ones and this. So that's really customer-centric, right? And that helps you to get out of the hygiene issues. Not only that, you also understand when you're doing a lot of huge initiatives, you understand whether these are going to resolve some of those. So you need to be really there. Value engineering, it's about ROI. A few other tags you have is being curious, being collaborative. As individuals, you should be able to experiment. And anybody's role is anybody in today's world, right? So it's like put yourself into somebody else's shoe and understand how it works. And of course, networking is equally important. Not just the technology, but also as individual, and this is the right place. I've learned a lot of great friends and people around that, and that's my motive, that to understand. And every year we meet, or every other year, things have changed. So the topic may be the same, but the responses and the interaction is really, really good. So I just picked up from this World Economic Forum, which is a few days back. Having said all these, even the one skill which is looked up in next 5 years or 10 years or 20 years is all about very human-centric skill, barring what you can learn from that. So what this report mentioned is really on creativity. So that something has changed, has changed in the last 3 years. It's like in 2015, it was down around 8 or 9, but if you look at creativity, it has really gone up. And that's what we embed in our kids, right? So there are a lot of motivational things like behave like a kid, right? Ask any questions, and you should do the same thing even in your office, so wherever it permits. So that's one interesting finding in the Lego bricks. Of a 6 standard Lego bricks can have 915 million ways of combination, right? So it's just an appreciation that we allow them anything, and you can really amaze that what kids can come out. And the education really spoils them. That's the other part of it. So the same analogy should apply as in your role to see that certain things done in certain way doesn't hold good for future, right? So you validate, and then as you grow in your career, most of the things will be true. And even if the organization is not ready, you might be ready, right? So don't get frustrated in this journey, because it's not just one individual changing, but it's the whole organization changing. So to close it out, as I was saying, it's all about be the next. I hope all of you are aspiring for the next CIO award. And what it can take you is that first thing you are done is that you are having a cross-domain exposure, right? All of you might be leading IT in your own organization, but when you exchange these ideas from different cross-industry, you really get a lot of insight. Long back when I did my project management certification, I didn't do from my organization. I went to the PMI where there were projects not run by IT, but project managers from civil engineering, project managers from aero, and that really puts me that, and it was much easy for me to clear the exam that time because I was not putting into my project management tool like a MS project or something, but I was able to understand, for example, a scope change for a civil engineer is huge, right? Once you put the foundation, the scope change for them is huge compared to us. We'll say, yeah, we'll take it even before the release. So it really helps to break your barrier. And as I said, this is continuation of this, like do role play, like, if possible, get into somebody else's role for a day and understand what it takes them, because everywhere IT touches, digital touches everybody's life. This is one thing which I personally do. It's like management by walking around. If you guys do it, I don't stay in my place. At least I have, in fact, a calendar where I go out and meet people, just walk around and understand what they do. It's like this really gets apart from getting the reports or whatever, this really gets me a feeling, not just in my team, but for the entire organization, what's running around. And you should have an objective. It's not just a casual chat or politics around, but it's primarily about understand where I left and what has changed, right? So you should take notes of it once you come back. That's what you make it more productive. Learn new things daily. That this really helps you to learn new things. So I am privileged to be in my country operations review, and I don't have much to say other than saying everything is fine from my side. But I started to utilize this opportunity to take notes out of it, right? And in the beginning, out of say 20 different jargons I used, I used to know only like 10%, 20% of it. But over the time, I didn't want to disrupt the whole meeting. But over the time, I was really able to understand how we can relate it. Over the couple of years or 3 years, I'm able to at least understand now 80 to 90% of the things what they're talking about and how I can add value into it. I think we touched upon the empathy part of it. And even in your organization, to really promote this, you need to build really a collaborative work environment. Having said all these, talking about empathy, and then you sit in your office and don't meet your own team, that's really not helpful. So you need to be really collaborative, and you should be the real role model, right? So there is no title, right? You work along with them. In digital world, there is no such really title, right? People are expecting rapid change and rapid execution. So at that point, you cannot ask for approvals and process. And the last thing, yeah, of course, your network is your net worth, right? So at the end of the day, what you have is just your friends and what you learn from your network, be it professional or personal. So utilize to the max. That's what something the digital world doesn't really teach you directly, right? So these are the skills which would remain forever, I will believe. And the more you utilize, you would be a successful digital leader. So I think with that I can close, and wishing you all good luck. If you have any questions, you can. Otherwise, you can reach out to me. But I can really tell you that this is really a great experience. Breaking your this gives you a different path in your career as individual, and also to connect with people whom you didn't know yesterday. Thank you. Last week, in the client location, so he gets directly from people, and he connects from all people. So it's a great skill. You don't limit to the people at certain level. You connect to a developer, you connect to an engineer, you connect to a support, you even connect to a security for that matter, right? Just a hi tells you the pulse of the organization, right? So it's one of the really good skill which no robot can do it, right? So
thank you, Pradeep. As
thank
always,
you. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much for sharing, episodes from your own journey to becoming a IT leader. I think Pradeep is one of those people, like you, like he's always said, he feels himself very much part of this community, and what he has shared here is a lot of it from his personal experiences, and I hope you will be able to take some ideas from what he has shown. So thank you so much, Pradeep, for being here.
Sure.
This is a small token from our
Thank
side.